Tien woke to the smell of smoke. At first, she believed it was coming from the small stove behind the family house. Then an orange light moved across the bedroom wall. She rushed to the window. Beyond the garden, flames were rising behind the bamboo grove. "Jack! Jack!" Jack was already awake. He pulled on his jacket and ran through the front door. By the time Tien reached the veranda, he was standing in the yard, staring toward the old wooden house above the family property. It was the house where Jack had spent his earliest years. It was also the last building his father had constructed before his health began to decline. Fire was pushing through the rear roof. Dry bamboo leaves spun above the red tiles, glowing as the wind carried them toward the family's current home. Mother Loi stepped onto the veranda. When she saw the flames, the color left her face. "No," she whispered. She started toward the bamboo path. Jack caught her arm. "Mother, stay here. My things are inside. Nothing inside is worth you going near that house. The metal chest is beneath the bedroom window." Jack looked toward the burning roof. "What is in it?" Mother Loi tried to pull free. "My wedding photograph. Your father's notebook. The letters he wrote before you were born." Another section of roof collapsed. Sparks rose above the trees. Jack tightened his grip on her arm. "You are not going inside." Mother Loi looked at him as if he had just asked her to abandon the man she had loved. "That house is all I have left of him." Jack turned toward the flames. "No, it isn't." Uncle Dung arrived from the lower road with several villagers. A local emergency team was already approaching from the other side of the hill, but fallen bamboo had slowed their vehicle. The wind shifted. Smoke rolled down toward the lotus pond and covered part of the garden. Uncle Dung pointed toward the long wooden front section of the old house. "The rear is already lost. If the fire reaches the front roof, the wind will carry it directly toward this house." Jack understood immediately. Between the burning building and the family's current home stood only a narrow open yard, a dry fence, and a line of garden trees. The intact front section of the old house had become a bridge for the fire. The safest option was also the one Mother Loi would never willingly accept. They had to pull it down before the flames reached it. If this family has found a place in your heart, subscribe and stay with them, because before that morning ended, Jack would have to destroy the last house his father ever built. Tien guided Mother Loi back toward the veranda. "We need to move the important things from this house," she said. Mother Loi stared at the flames. "I am not leaving him there." Tien placed both hands around hers. "Your husband is not inside that fire. The house carries his hands, and Jack carries his life." Mother Loi looked toward her son. Jack was speaking with the emergency team near the fence. His face remained controlled, but his hands were shaking. The team leader pointed toward the old house and then toward the family home. "We can protect the occupied house," he told Jack, "but that front wooden section must come down now. Once it catches, we may lose both buildings." Jack looked at the veranda where his mother stood. "How long do we have?" "Minutes, not an hour." Jack crossed the yard. Mother Loi saw the answer on his face before he spoke. "No. Mother, no. Your father cut every beam himself. If we leave it standing, the fire may reach this house. Then we put out the fire. They are trying." Jack lowered his voice, "But the wind is moving faster than they can." Mother Loi walked toward the path again. Jack stood in front of her. "You cannot destroy it. I am trying to protect you. By destroying the place where our family began, by protecting the place where our family is still alive." Mother Loi struck his chest once with the flat of her hand. It was not hard, but it stopped everyone around them. Tears filled her eyes. "You do not understand what you are asking me to lose." Jack did not defend himself. He looked past her at the old house. "I remember Father teaching me to measure wood on that veranda. I remember sleeping beside the kitchen when the rain entered through the roof. I remember him carrying me through that doorway." His voice weakened. "I know exactly what we are losing." A burning section of bamboo fell across the rear wall. The flames moved forward. The team leader shouted that they could no longer wait. Jack faced his mother. "I need your permission." Mother Loi shook her head. I cannot give it. Jack closed his eyes briefly. Then he made the decision. I am sorry. He turned toward Uncle Dung. Bring the line forward. Under the direction of the emergency team, a heavy cable was secured to the already weakened front frame. Everyone moved behind the marked safety area. Jack took hold of the control line. Mother Loi stepped forward. Tien held her back. Jack! Mother Loi cried. Please! Jack looked at the house one final time. Through the smoke, he could still see the old front door. His father had carved a small mark into its frame when Jack was a child. The beam above it had survived decades of rain, cold, and neglect. Now Jack was about to bring it down himself. He pulled. For 1 second, nothing moved. Then the front post leaned. Wood cracked through the sound of the fire. Part of the veranda collapsed into the yard. Mother Loi cried out. The main frame remained standing. The wind pushed flames closer. Jack pulled again. This time the front wall tore away from the roof. The old doorway fell inward. The remaining roof dropped with it, leaving a wide break between the fire and the family's current home. The emergency team moved forward and contained the flames along the open ground. Burning debris continued to fall, but it could no longer travel through the roof toward the occupied house. Jack released the line. He stood completely still. Mother Loi looked at the fallen doorway. Then she suddenly remembered the chest. Before Tien could stop her, she moved toward the safety boundary. My photograph! A burning beam shifted above the old bedroom wall. Jack saw it fall. He ran toward his mother and pulled her backward. The beam struck the ground where she had been standing. Jack covered her with his body as sparks scattered across the wet soil. Tien and Uncle Dung reached him. Mother Loi was uninjured, but she could not stop shaking. Jack held her shoulders. I told you nothing. Inside was worth your life. The chest. Mother, look at me. She raised her eyes. You are the reason Father built that house, Jack said. Not the chest. Not the walls. You. Mother Loi covered her face. For the first time since the fire began, she stopped trying to move toward the ruins. The flames weakened after sunrise. The old house was gone except for part of the stone foundation and several blackened beams. The family's current home remained standing. Its white walls were stained with smoke. Several garden plants had burned, and part of the wooden fence had been destroyed. But no one had been hurt. Mother Loi sat beneath the veranda, wrapped in a blanket. She had not spoken to Jack since the house fell. Jack disappeared into the family home. A few minutes later he returned, carrying a small metal chest. Mother Loi stood so quickly that the blanket fell from her shoulders. Where did you find that? Jack placed the chest on the table. 2 weeks ago, I saw rain entering through the old bedroom window. The bottom of the chest was beginning to rust. He opened the repaired clasp. Inside were the wedding photograph, his father's notebook, and a bundle of letters tied with faded cloth. I moved it here so I could repair the lock. Mother Loi touched the photograph with trembling fingers. You had already saved it? I saved the things inside. Jack looked toward the smoking ruins. I did not know I would have to lose the house. Mother Loi pressed the photograph against her chest. I struck you. You were saying goodbye. I begged you to protect Wood while you were trying to protect me. Jack sat beside her. I nearly waited too long because I wanted you to forgive the decision before I made it. Mother Loi shook her head. You did not have time to wait for me. Tien returned from the old foundation carrying a short, blackened piece of timber. One side was burned, but the small mark cut by Jack's father was still visible. This was part of the old doorway, she said. Jack ran his thumb across the mark. Mother Loi looked from the wood to the metal chest. Do not build the house again, she said. Jack appeared surprised. Mother Loi looked at the home behind them, then at Tien. Your father built the first house because we needed somewhere to begin. You and Tien built this one because our family needed somewhere to continue. She placed her hand over Jack's. Do not spend your life rebuilding the past exactly as it was. That afternoon, Jack cleaned the surviving section of timber. He did not turn it into a monument or hide it inside a locked room. He placed it beneath the veranda as a simple bench. Mother Loi set the restored wedding photograph above it. Tien brought 3 cups of tea. The family sat together as smoke faded above the bamboo grove. Mother Loi looked at the empty place where the old house had stood. I thought losing that house meant losing him again. Jack looked at the photograph. What do you feel now? Mother Loi reached for his hand. I feel that he built one house. She placed her other hand over two Tien's. But he raised the man who protected this one. The fire had taken the walls, the roof, and the doorway where Jack had grown up. But it had not taken the family his father had built inside them. And for the first time that day, Mother Loi turned her back on the ruins and looked toward the home that was still standing,